do more.
There we go.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Plan of Conservation and Development discussion roundtable. I just wanted, before we begin, introduce the newest member to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Sandy or Sandra Coppola. Sandy is fine. She comes from a background with CBA, and she is anxious to see what we're all about. She's very excited to take on a new challenge, and we welcome all of her thoughts and questions moving forward. And Sandy, so you know, we have Peter Zaragoza, and we have Tim Zygmunt, Diane Jorsey, Steve Biella, and Maureen, just so you know. And online in the bottom left-hand corner is Jim Mahoney. Jim, way, yeah. And we also have Andrew Legnani with us as well. And we have his picture. And
He's
not moving.
Very still.
He's probably having dinner. Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Maureen and our consultant.
And then we also have our consultants, which Francisco Gnomes is on the screen, and Ken Livingston, both from FHI Studios, who are the consultants hired to help us through the Plan of Conservation and Development process. And we'll turn it over to one of them.
Okay, in which case that'll be me. Ken is my fail-safe here in case for some reason my connection goes down, but hopefully we're pretty
We
good.
lost you. We lost you. Hold on a minute.
The natural disaster shows a behavior of certain just to relate. That's where to find emergencies before they show up.
As he says, I'm his backup. I just failed right there.
All right, do you have me back?
Did that? No, it's back again. Hold on. We're getting there.
Visit kidvaccines.org.
Okay, good night. Let's go home.
Wow, it's gonna be really easy.
No, darn it.
Gotta be an input somewhere.
Hold on, guys. Sorry. Oh, that's not it.
And we have a guest.
I was like full blame of this.
One of these.
What if you hit it go to home? No, there's no.
You're on TV. You're on TV.
Gotta be something with
Sort of Zoom.
It's time
Someone
to
else
take a
will.
step forward, come
Oh,
together,
it's in it.
accepting our differences.
Yes. Exit that. There we go.
Hey, look at that.
Okay.
All my fault, Francisco. Which was just the volume.
Oh.
I don't know.
All right.
So I had the same problem with the volume on this remote last week, and I do not know which one is volume. So you're really loud in this room.
Okay, and you can hear me. Oh, okay, though, right?
Very loudly, yes.
Okay, so I don't need to like speak up or anything. You can hear me, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. It's good to see you, even though you're absolutely microscopic on my screen, but we have a lot of content to go over, so that shouldn't be an issue. And you've all met Ken Livingston. Ken, you probably met him at the interview if you're at the interview, and Ken's senior advisor on the project and vice president at the firm. So he has oversight over the project and knows the ins and out of it. But I'm the person leading the day-to-day technical work. So I'll be giving the presentation as it is this meeting remotely, but we have a lot of content to get through, so I'll jump right into it. Welcome to our second meeting. And while this is only our second meeting, we're well underway in our work. And today's agenda is focused on land use and zoning, and which is really the foundation of a POCD and much of what the POCD is intended to guide in any given community. So we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about that and looking at it from all different perspectives. And then finally, we're going to revisit the vision statement that we worked on at our last meeting and talk about our next steps. So our schedule, where are we at in this process? Well, we're still very early in the process, having met with you last month for the first time. There we are. And we're not yet to the point where we've initiated community engagement. However, we are preparing for that, and we'll talk a little bit about the survey this evening. Our existing conditions work is well underway. We will soon as well be starting work on the affordable housing plan, and then at some point in the spring, we'll actually start to take all this work and package it into the POCD document, and for conclusion by the end of 2022. So I know many of you have seen this schedule before. Just in case we had someone who wasn't at the last meeting, I wanted to go over it again quickly, make sure we're all on the same page about our timeline for the work. All right, and of course, we will also be taking a look at the BTD zoning and making recommendations for any necessary amendments to that zoning. All right, so jumping right into the technical work here, I'd like to talk about land cover, and that's very similar to land use, and I'll hopefully do a good job of explaining the difference between the two. Land use is typically mapped and measured by parcel, by property, and land cover is by kind of like by the square foot or by the acre. And so as we take a look at Berlin's land cover, and here we see some of the surrounding communities on the map too, you get a sense as to what is actually on the ground in the town. And so hopefully you can read the key, but I'll point out some of the more obvious items. Developed areas, they include pavement and buildings, roads, highways, that sort of thing, parking lots. That's all the red. And so you can see that there's a good share of Berlin is developed. And that development follows major corridors like the Berlin Turnpike and 372, and is found in some of in Kensington Center and other commercial centers. The other very ubiquitous land use is turf and grass, which is not necessarily the native state of things. Those areas are often converted from forest cover or maybe from a prior agricultural use. And that's all the yellow areas. And those typically are associated with development. They're athletic fields and parks and lawns and campus settings, that sort of thing. So that's all the yellow area. And then what you see really the most of is green. And so those are your areas that remain in a natural state, whether it's forest, the medium green there, the brighter green is deciduous forest cover, so maple and oak, that sort of thing. The darker green is primarily coniferous, pine trees and spruce. And you see that a good part of the town remains forested in its native state. And if you go back far enough, a lot of that land may have been agriculture at some point that has successional forests that have since grown on it when the agriculture was abandoned. And you also see some remaining agricultural fields in the town, and that's that brownish red color. Those active uses are shrinking. There are some historic farm fields that aren't actively worked. And we know that we have major farm operations like Sunny Borders that's closing their operations. And so while those agricultural fields exist, that land use is going to be changing over time. And in fact, this mapping, which was done by the state, and it's a very good mapping of the entire state, is 6 years old now. And so there have been some changes since that time as well. So if we focus on the changes that have been mapped, the mapping that the state has done goes back as far as 1985, and they've done mapping on a periodic basis since then, with the most recent mapping done in 2015. And what you can see with this map is exactly how land use or land cover has changed in Berlin over that 30-year period. And so what we see is all the red areas are areas that have been developed, that were formerly undeveloped areas, whether they were forest or farm fields or grass areas. And then the yellow areas are areas that were changed to turf or grass from forest cover or agricultural fields. So the development is fairly scattered across town. However, there are some very clear clusters of it along 9 and 15, and right in the center of town where there had been some farm fields. And you could see that in the yellow and red areas right at the center of town. And I'll point some of those out as we go. Now, when we take a look at what those areas have changed from, as I mentioned, they mostly change from either farmland or to a lesser extent forested areas. And so what you see is any of the brown areas were farms and agricultural lands that were developed over that 30-year period. And those, once again, are clustered right around the center of town along Crooked Brook. And to a lesser degree, you have some forest areas, but relatively small forest clusters that were developed. The bigger tracts of land that were developed came out of farm fields. And there are a lot of reasons for that. One of them being as the farm fields go out of production, that land is just in a great location and it's generally pretty accessible land. And there are no trees on it. So it's the cost to build on it's a lot lower. And so agriculture is very often the first land to be developed over forested areas, which are very often in more challenging topographic parts of town. And for a little geographic reference there, the areas that have been developed in those former farm fields are all kind of surrounding Bicentennial Park. So I think we wanted to probe you a little bit as we go along with this presentation so that it's not just me talking at you for an hour. So I have a question here, and I'd love to get your input on it, and that is, and you could read it right there, but has the development of farmland and forest, do you feel, been beneficial to the town over this past 30-year period? Or do you feel that loss of those open spaces has been a detriment to the town in any way, changed the character? I wonder if you folks have any thoughts on that.
It has changed character, central part of the town.
Yeah.
Has not changed the character so much out South Kensington. Some developments coming out there, but for the number of acres developed
right
out there, it's a small amount out there. I do see the green ones, and I'm assuming that's probably part of the land trust and the land that was donated to the town on developments. And,
so the green, just so that you understand the map, the green on here is everything that used to be forest that was developed over that 30-year period. We're seeing what it used to be.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, just my only comment is that the question is, has the development of farmland or the forest been beneficial to the community? I think the question is, what was it developed into? If it's developed into a walking park, or if it's developed into an open space, or land that's been dedicated by a farm. I mean, that to me is a benefit to the community. My dad used to have a saying, it was, hang on to your land, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Right.
So to say that development of farmlands or forests is actually beneficial to the community, I think it gets to a breaking point where it becomes a negative to the community. And I say this because there are surrounding towns that would love to have the open space that Berlin provides, even for just a nice drive home. And that's one
Sure.
thing everyone is surprised at, is that how pretty the town is with the sort of weaving, meandering roads. And then you have these open space. It's not just house on top of house. I think that's what we have to be careful of. But that's my opinion.
Okay. And I do have some more slides for you that will get into some of the numbers on exactly, you know, how much of this space has been converted to what, and to cut to the chase on that, it's most of this is residential development, with the exception of some commercial development along the Turnpike and 372. Most of it is subdivisions and multifamily housing.
Just to comment also that one of the things we talked about was obviously there's development pressure on these vacant parcels. I think during the period since about 2005, the town has also acquired about 1,000 acres, you know, for open space. So, you know, we've kind of secured that portion as we've gone along as well. So there have been efforts.
Yeah, I just have some comments on that too. My initial inclination is to say that to me, it seems like what agricultural land has been developed has gone for residential development, which I don't think is necessarily beneficial to the community, just because of the expenses that the town has in providing services to those residential developments. But being a farm owner, third generation in this town, I can tell you that farming is very difficult for any younger generation person, and almost impossible for a younger generation person to engage in unless the town considers purchase of development rights and amending zoning regulations to allow for maybe one house on some of the acreage, like in the POCD area. Otherwise, agriculture is going to be declining because the younger kids are going to be going off to easier ways of providing themselves with a living.
Yeah, I mean, and that's certainly not unique to Berlin or Connecticut at all. It's yeah, that's the challenge to agriculture through much of the country, I think, on smaller farms.
Has the value of the farming, I know that it's being tough and all of that, but the sort of financial return improved recently, or you hear more people, smaller farms and local agriculture, and has the value of produce, I guess, and your returns increased, or?
Well, I would say that there is definitely more interest from the public to support local agriculture. More so in recent years than say 20 or 30 years ago. But the circumstance that I happen to be in is I'm at a point where I could use extra help, but I can't afford to hire them. On paper, I lose money every year. I have to work a full-time job just to have the pleasure of working my butt off every weekend to have a farm.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not for everybody. We have made a choice to do what we do because we love it, but not everybody is us.
Right. Okay, well, I do expect that this is a topic where we'll come back to again and again.
You got a couple, one more.
Well, the other comment is, as we move forward, I think it would be to our benefit for the town is to find ways to help farmers keep their land. And whether it's through tax incentives, whether it's through, I don't know how to place it so that the burden is not so much on them. So that if they do want to continue farming, I think we need to encourage that because, you know, I go to the grocery store and you can't get certain products and already a garden that I backfilled because the critters ate me out every year. I'm now considering maybe I need to open those gates up again and try to go at it one more time. Just because it's harder to get fresh produce and stuff. And I do find when they do have farmers markets or local things for sale, people will stop and buy the local products. They like to support the farmers because they know they're getting a good deal.
They're even starting to look at, you know, purchasing their own cow, for example, from a farm, having the farmer grow it for another year, they pay expenses, and then they go and they butcher it out because they have control over, you know, what the cow is eating. You know, and again, it's more local, so same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think COVID has made people think more about self-sustainability also. You know, having a harder time getting groceries being way more expensive. It has people thinking differently than they have in the past.
Sure.
Aren't you glad you asked?
Well, you know, this is a really important issue to Berlin's identity, to individual farmers, the few that are left, and it's really a really important issue that the POCD should address.
And you have that people like, I want the farmers, but if you can't have anyone that's going to farm it, or it's not economically viable, then is it just open space you want, or do you want the active farming?
The farm stands are more popular right now, whatever.
Yeah.
But if we looked at our town, the farm stands right down Chittenden Highway, a lot of them are past their time or not open anymore. And you know, the larger farm stands are thriving because of the thing. And so you got to encourage, you know, that type of thing.
But with that said, we came a long way a few years ago in making amendments to the agricultural regulations. But there's a long way to go. They still are not right. Those need amendments in order to make it easier for people to engage in farm business.
Yeah.
Just the directional signs that get right. I mean, they couldn't get directional signs to their farms that would have stands or something for sale.
You still can't unless you know the system.
Well, you got to know the system. There is a system.
All right, well, let's keep moving forward because we do still have a lot of content to cover here.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so getting into the numbers of the land cover, here's how it breaks out. And most of the town is covered by forest. As you can see there, about 40% of Berlin is covered by forest, with only around 26% of the town actually developed. So, you know, I think depending on where you are in town, where you're driving through town, you can really change your perception about how developed or undeveloped Berlin is. But truth of the matter is much of the town is still undeveloped. And so it's really important for us to have a conversation about where is that balance? Where does that need to be?
I'm sorry, I just have one quick question. The information you're sharing is dating to 2015. Do we have anything that's closer to where we are in our timeline?
No, unfortunately we don't. Not for land cover, but I can tell you what we do have are a number of slides that I have yet to get to that document the changes that have occurred since that time.
Okay. And do you have a slide that covers wetlands area? I know a lot of swamp.
Right. So we have a bar there, the 867 acres of forested wetland and the 17 acres of non-forest wetland, that bluish green aqua color. So that shows your quantity of wetlands in the town. And next month, we're going to take a deeper dive into open space and natural resources. So we'll talk a little bit more about wetlands next month. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Now, going back to how things change, we just took a go back. So this is 2015. These are how things were 6 years ago. And really the numbers haven't changed significantly since then. These bars have shifted a little bit, but it really doesn't look all that different in the past 6 years. Over the 30-year period, though, between 1985 and 2015, you can see those changes, that balance shifting with the developed land and the land that was converted to turf and grass on the left, and then the agricultural fields and the forest land that was developed, that was lost to the town, in the bars on the right. So in total, it was 892 acres developed over that 30-year period. And those acres came out of a little less than 600 acres of farmland and about 700 acres of forested land.
May I make a comment on the forested areas?
Yeah.
Because I think that some of the statistics that you're sharing with us are skewed a bit, because there's significant acreage in the town that's owned by the city of Meriden and owned by the city of New Britain for their watershed areas.
Yeah.
So those cities have, they own land in the town that is not available to our townspeople,
right,
for recreational use. And the statistics show, that we have all this forested area, which is true, but it's just not available to our people anymore. And it's not taxed.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation. That starts to get a little bit more into land use, which I'll get into in a moment. This is just about what's within the physical boundaries of Berlin, what's covering the ground. And as we get into land use, then we start to think about, well, who owns that property and what's it used for? So if you folks are like 2 slides ahead of me tonight.
Oh, okay.
Consistent. All right. So once again, and I'm not going to read all these numbers, but the information's here. So we'll send the final version of this out to you. I know Maureen sent the working version earlier this week, but we'll post the PDF of this so you can dig into these numbers. And there are the numbers right there on exactly how much acreage you had in 1985 versus 2015 and where the changes were experienced. I think the most important point to make here is that most of that development occurred between 1985 and 1995 in that 10-year period. And you can see it in those bars, those bar charts, where that distribution is changing over those 3 different periods where the land cover was assessed. And then from 2002 on out, there was very, very little change in the land cover. All right. Okay, and we do have, the town has New England Geo is their mapping contractor, and we actually had a call with them earlier in the week to discuss mapping needs. And so we do have some updated land cover mapping 2021. However, we don't yet have any numbers from this, so it's hard to measure it against the 2015 data produced by the state, because we don't have calculations on these areas. But we are working towards developing up-to-date mapping for the POCD and updating all of these maps that are relevant to it. All right. So you're curious about land use and land cover change and what specifically has changed and what that development is. And so what this map shows you are all the single family homes built since 2003. And the green color is on the map is between 2003 and 2007. So that was the real building boom in the early 2000s associated with the real estate boom. And then the purple color is after 2008, 2012, and the blue is 2013 to present. And what we see here is that the development is occurring in smaller clusters. These aren't big subdivisions. These are, at most maybe 10 houses in a subdivision. And it's fairly evenly distributed through town. There isn't one area in particular that saw a tremendous amount of development relative to any other area of town. In total, there have been about 50 single-family homes constructed since 2013. And so the real question that I think this poses to us is, do you feel that Berlin has capacity for more single-family home development? And that's a question to you, and I open it up to you right now.
Has capacity for more single family homes. That's
Well,
but that doesn't.
Yeah, right. So I think given all the other things that you value about the community you would like to preserve, do you feel that there's still room to accommodate more single family development?
I think it becomes less of a priority for us. I think it's just a question of, we can say, yes, we have oodles of land, but I mean, I think, again, that tipping point is, when does it become a part of, when do you arrive at the point where you become like everybody else? We have a tremendous opportunity to hold on to some precious land and farmland and open space. And I think that to me is more important than building out the town in single family homes. I guess that's where I go, because it's not going to get it back.
Okay.
So it's kind of a double-edged question. Yeah, we have the capacity for more single homes. Yeah, sure. Yep. Open it up, stick them in, build them up. But then what do you got? Just got a lot of single family homes. And I don't know with that.
What you have is every other town.
You have the same as every other town. There's a uniqueness.
So we're just the bedroom community of the neighboring cities, Britain or Middletown, whatever. Okay, and then single families come in, and the more expensive homes were built, larger homes were built on acre, 3 acre, 5 acre pieces of land, farmland that was sold or something, and large pieces of land. There isn't that many R15s or R21 land that's available.
No, because it's all built up.
Because they're built up.
They're all jammed in.
But, and now over the last 10 years, whatever, multifamily has come up, and what we got on the books for 500 and something units or 600 units, so was on the books that's approved or potential to be approved. Our multifamily homes are starting to grow, not to single family.
Yeah. Now you know how realistic those are.
Which is just changing the flavor of town, changing down. Not that multifamilies are bad, but it has made a change to the town in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Younger generation likes the multifamily condo living. The millennials.
Younger generation, they definitely, and
like the younger-
Yeah,
we
but they don't
built,
want to be multi-family.
we built over those
Unless you
years.
want mom and dad to
Over
pay
those
for
years,
it.
we built a lot of 55 and older developments, because our town is a older generation town and getting older all the time. The younger people couldn't stay in town because they couldn't afford these big houses that were big, single family homes were big.
Yeah, but a lot of them don't wanna, a lot of millennials don't want to deal with driveway.
Right.
Come and go as they please, and everything's taken care of.
You know, the older developments are the small little branches, 1,000-foot, 1,200-foot branches. For after the war, a lot of military type of housing stuff happened. And then expanded to bigger houses. And that's what you see today.
But, yeah.
Multi-family.
But the question is, so to the group is, does Berlin have the capacity for more single family homes? Does anyone else have a comment? Sandy, you know it?
I don't think it does personally, and I don't really know if there's even a need for more single family development in town. You know, from the numbers you gave us, young families are dropping, right? You might remember the last presentation. So is there a, great demand for single family housing in this town from people wanting to move in, or is there not?
Well, the older single family houses now, the neighborhoods are, my neighborhood, or neighborhood I used to live in, they're turning over. You know, it's from the older people, the old people, and the newer couples are coming into a smaller home.
Right.
Okay, and then when they income, two income home happens and they have kids, now they want to out to the bigger homes. Now, that demand is there for the bigger homes, and the land is there for the bigger homes. But the question is it beneficial to the town to do that?
Diane, any input on that?
I agree with what you guys are saying, that, I don't really, yes, we can squeeze more houses in, but do we have the capacity? I don't think so.
Okay, there you have your answer.
All right, well, let's talk, a couple of you had mentioned some of the multi-family development that has occurred in the market for that. So let's move on and talk about multifamily developments. Ahead of me again. There's been a decent amount of multifamily development since 2000. And that can be seen, a lot of that's oriented along 15 and in the northern part of town. And so some of this development has been affordable housing, which has helped the town make some pretty significant gains towards the state's affordable housing goals. And that development has really, it's occurred fairly progressively or evenly since 2000. The red that you see there on the map was developed prior to 2000, and since then the dark blue is 2001 to 2013, and the yellow is in the past 7 years, so since 2014. So this begs a similar question. Do you feel that the town has some capacity, or do you think it's a good strategy for the town to continue to support this type of development?
Does this include like some of the plans that are currently under development? That are,
Yes.
plans? It does, okay.
Yes, so the
Yeah.
yellow is, some of the yellow are the things that are approved, but not yet built. Actually, I think it is all the yellow.
Yeah, we've got another slide for that as well, but
Sorry.
we'll get there.
Oh, not all the yellow, but most of it.
Yeah, right.
Well, again, the question about capacity for more multi-family, yeah, we have the capacity for it. Do we want it? Not all over Berlin. I think that the reason it's along 9 and 15 is for that reason, is that it would give them, an access onto the highways and an access to go to work. And that's what it's thought of. I don't think it was, I think that's where we wanted it concentrated. along the highways
yeah, it's
and the major
a
thoroughfares.
workforce.
Yeah.
That stuff that's happening and the affordable happening in that workforce
Yeah.
together. So that said, affordable and the workforce need access to highways. and stuff.
Well,
And-
highways
and,
and
you
train
know, as you
stations.
saw your slides last time, you know, the workforce goes out of town, Harvard or whatever, to work, to insurance companies or whatever. I guess some of it's coming back into town and manufacturing. But it's still, they're the ones like question over here said, you know, that they don't want lawns and upkeep. All
Yeah,
that
no, they
stuff.
don't, they want.
You know, they want to have the swimming pool and have their workout areas and go be happy, you know.
Yeah, go out to
You
dinner.
know, and the 55 and olders that are on this map, you know, they're the same way. They got out of the big house and they're downsizing into the smaller stuff.
I also think one of the things we saw over the past year and a half is with so many more people working from home. It's becoming a trend where a lot of companies, you know, insurance companies, et cetera, are reconsidering, are we going to be bringing these people back into a main office? Because if they don't, they're saving on liability and taxes and everything as well. And there was, you know, there was for a while, people leaving smaller homes or apartments in the cities, et cetera, because now mom, dad were working from home and the kids are homeschooling, and all of a sudden you saw people moving, say, from the city or whatnot into more towns to have more areas. So I think that's kind of an unknown that we have right now too, as to what's going to happen in the next short couple of years.
Especially with the COVID thing, everyone was locked down. And, you know, so now they want to get out and they don't want to do that home keeping. And they want to get out, travel and see the world and work from home, like she said. You know, it's a total different, I think it turned the whole world around. Just being locked down, it's giving people a different taste of the world.
Yeah.
You know?
So I guess you have your answer there.
Okay. All right. And I think I understand from you, you feel like where the development has occurred, it makes the most sense for it to occur along those major corridors. But are there any other areas of town that you feel would make a lot of sense for multifamily development where it has not occurred or may not be currently zoned to support it?
Where would be like, I'm just trying to figure out where the train station, et cetera, is, because that's the only thing I couldn't, you know, think of.
Yeah, that's.
Like,
He's struggling it right now.
Yeah, there's Kensington right there.
He's got the cursor, I know.
There's been a.
With the development we have going in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's gonna be, you know,
And more potential,
multifamily stuff there too, so.
and more potential. right
It's yellow,
around-
you just can't see it.
The potential
It is
right
yellow,
around
yeah.
there, Berlin Steel and all that land. You know, that's, you know, Berlin Steel's going to be going out, and all that land around that train station is going to change. And that's more potential of that whole area. Yeah, that's
So I think
because
we
of
have
the
to
trade
wait.
and everything else, multifamily would be good in there.
Right. Okay, all right.
And we
Okay.
have to try to attract.
All right, well, let's keep going. And once again, you kind of asked about the status of some things. And much of that development is at various stages with applications pending, 578 housing units that have an application pending, 86 that are approved, and 120 under development. And so on this map, the red parcels have applications pending at the time this map was made. This map was made in March, so we've had a few changes since then, and those are noted on the map. So there are a lot of units pending right now with many others that have been approved or are under development. Okay,
Excellent, thank you.
all right. Okay, let's talk a little bit about commercial development. And most of the commercial development in the town is as you would expect it, it's happening in your commercial and industrial zones, and those are primarily in the northern part of town, along 9 and the Berlin Turnpike and along the rail corridor. And most of that development has really been an expansion of existing or local businesses. There have been very few projects that are, brand new projects on undeveloped land. There are some, but the majority of these projects have been redevelopment or expansions of existing uses. So given your knowledge of the development that's occurred in Berlin over the past decade or so, do you feel that it's been consistent with your vision of the community? Is that development making Berlin a better place? What do you think?
We hear all the time from citizens in town questioning us about the development of the Berlin Turnpike into businesses, and why are there not more businesses in that strip. So it has to do with the infrastructure that's available to the businesses, but I think we're also very aware of the future development that is coming probably sooner rather than later of the area that's referred to as the Golden Triangle, because that land is now up for sale and could be either a huge benefit for the town or a huge detriment, depending on what happens there.
Okay. And well, let's talk a little bit about that, using that as an example. What kind of commercial development, or maybe it's not commercial development, if that area or when that area is developed, what kind of development do you think would be most beneficial to the town?
Well, the Golden Triangle itself is a lot of mountain, hill, rock. Most of it down lower areas, wetlands. And it really reflects itself to retail commercial because of the location of it right between all the highways.
Right.
And the rest of the Berlin Turnpike, which everyone, like Diane said, wanted more development on the Berlin Turnpike, like a Newington, because Christmas time you watch traffic go up Newington and they go to every store instead of going to the malls anymore. They don't go to the malls, they go to every store. And they want that in Berlin. The problem with our Berlin Turnpike is the land. Okay, they're either not depth in order to build large. Okay, that's why our zoning regulations went into basically collecting up a bunch of pieces and trying to develop with a bunch of pieces of owners, different owners, collecting up land in order to develop, because the depth wasn't there, so you had to need the frontage, and that's become a problem for development.
I think Diane's right in the sense that what she had said, that the Berlin Turnpike is someplace that everyone looks to see what can we help it and develop it more, bring more businesses in. I know some businesses have been abandoned there. The old Mickey Finn's building is there, and we're always waiting to see if there's a good use for that. There's an old abandoned gas station that's probably on 6 or 7 acres across from the Triangle that everyone looks at. But the Golden Triangle itself, I think, I don't know. I mean, I used to always think it would be great if you could have a big like country village outside shopping center. But as the world has turned, I think that people are getting away from that sort of outside shopping, and away from malls. And I hope that because of its location, I hope that it would have some sort of commercial or manufacturing or something because that would be a big thing for the town. And you would have access to all the major highways, so you wouldn't have to disturb the town.
It's really not your residential
No,
spot,
it's
so you're
not
not,
really.
if it were to be that kind of
Yeah.
business, it's not really disrupting the neighborhood.
So
Yeah,
just
that's
right,
right.
and everything else doesn't go for residential. The
Right,
developer
so- Well,
couldn't
yeah, but I
develop
mean,
it, or-
Well, everyone always looked at it, I mean, there was a time
Financially,
that they
it would
had them, they wanted to put a mall in there. And that was back when 85, 86, and there was a big push to actually build a huge shopping mall there. And I think that was gonna actually be the one instead of the Meriden Square. And it was drummed out in Berlin, and they ended up going to Meriden when there was less resistance.
Walmart wanted to go there first.
Yeah.
That
It was
came
all
out.
good. So, I mean, I kind of get away from that, but yeah, I agree that Berlin Turnpike, there's room for development. there.
Over the years, we've had an awful lot of different things go with that golden triangle. I think the golden triangle is very important to us. You know, from Kraft coming down to put a practice field there, put a big stadium there to, you know,
And he did.
he didn't, but I'm just saying,
It's a big one.
we had so many proposals on that property, and the reason why it hasn't been developed is it's a hard piece of property to develop.
Yeah.
So a developer's got to come up with something that's going to make money at the end in order to build there. And
Right.
That
Okay.
hasn't been found.
All right.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
All right, good. Well, let's keep going. And vacant land. So this was a map that the town had worked with New England Geo to develop, and this was to identify vacant or developable, potentially developable parcels, and including parcels that have applications pending. And as you could see, those parcels are almost exclusively along the turnpike or along Route 9 or north of Route 9. So that's where most of the potential is for commercial development, or really it could be mixed use development or any other type of development for that matter. And a couple of these have since this map was created in May, this includes 404 Berlin Turnpike and 550 have since been have applications approved or pending. So this really ties into our discussion on the prior slide, thinking about what kind of development is best suited for Berlin. And I think this affords us an opportunity to maybe talk a little bit about mixed use development. And if you think that's something that may be really viable for Berlin, and what is mixed use development. And as we refer to mixed use, it generally implies that there's a combination of residential and commercial uses. And do you think that's a type of development or formula that will work well in Berlin or continue to work well? You have to add some examples of mixed use development.
Two more applications or one approved application, one potential just south of Dunning Road. You know, and that's not up there, but mixed use developments. I question with the ones up there in pink and the ones south of potentials or one under development. How much mixed use can town support? That's just a question. You know, it's a lot of units.
Yeah, so are you thinking at it mostly from the residential angle of it? How much of the residential component of mixed use can the town continue to support?
Well, that's a question that town people have overall. Can your services support that many number of units? The fire department, police department, ambulance, whatever, emergency services, can they support that?
Yep.
I don't see a problem with it personally. But, you know, now we're looking one of the developments, large hotel, retail in the front, and 200 units, whatever it was. In the back, you know, that's and right across the street, there's another potential the same thing. Again, like you said, all north of 9 and 15. You know, south of 9 and 15, we had the regular condo situation, or 55 and over. You know, it's just, you know, how much of that can be supported? That's questions I get.
Right.
You know, that's how much, you know, I don't see it affecting the town that much in that area. And the fire services and stuff like that. Being a volunteer most of my life.
Okay.
Found, I'm just saying that with that, the type of development, and towns got to look at the future of partial paid or paid services in their mind.
Right.
You know, and can we afford that?
Yeah. Peter, Sandy, Steve, or Diane, any comments?
Mixed use would probably be best along Farmington Ave or obviously on Charlotte Turnpike or any centrally located area, trying to maximize the village.
Yeah.
Train station.
Train stations.
Sandy, anything, Steve?
No, I would agree with that. I think if it's done right, it could attract. You know, it's based on what type of retail you have there. It's with the, you know, with the residents. But it can be successful. It's been successful in other states, et cetera.
Yeah.
That's work. So.
No, I think the mixed use can be appealing. I would like to be maybe a little more creative.
Yeah.
And, you know, have maybe some cultural value inserted into these mixed use areas, in addition to just retail along with residential.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right, good, good, thank you. All right, and then build out analysis. These analysis, this is not like a future land use plan, or this is in some ways kind of an academic exercise to figure out just how much of the town is potentially developable. And so this is work done earlier this year by the mapping consultant, taking a look at properties and then subtracting out for wetlands areas and areas that you can't build on. And what you get after going through that process, subtracting out, you know, floodplains and that sort of thing, are all the green areas, which are potentially developable areas. I wonder if you're surprised by where these potentially developable areas are. What you see in this map is it's kind of the opposite of where the development is actually occurring, in that it's on the western part of town and more naturalized areas. Now, this doesn't speak to the infrastructure that may or may not be in place to support development. And we're not pointing to any particular development type because much of these areas are zoned low density single family. But these are potentially developable areas. And I wonder if this map surprises you in any way.
Just to make a quick comment, the
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
the plan was, the map build out analysis was done for the 2013 plan. And, you know, I think we just did kind of a quick update to that with this map. So I'm sure we can get into that a little bit further, you know, and when we go along in the process, but we wanted to get something that you could start to look at. So that's where we're at now.
One area that I think is potential build out is between New Britain Road, and the railroad tracks. there's potential big pieces of property there that have wetlands on them, but also potential area to build behind Prentice Place. All that. No, not the Claywood itself. There were there's an old manufacturing building up there. All the bumps.
Where?
Only in the winter.
No, they all are. Yeah, they like fire them.
Yeah.
Behind McDonald's and
Behind McDonald's.
Princess Place, between there and the
Princess
railroad
Place.
tracks. It's a large area there that, again, being next to the railroad tracks can be
Yes, it's true.
multifamily or people running, to the train to go to work and whatever.
It's a GI zone,
workforce.
they want to get rid of an industrial zone.
Can I ask a question? Are you talking about what is commonly called the sand and stone property? Or different? Because we just got an application for property
Yes,
over there,
yes,
so.
yes, yes.
So we
That's part
came
of
in
it.
like
That's
today
part
while
of
I
it,
was
yes.
not in the office,
That's
so
part
I
of
have
it,
not
yes.
looked at it yet. I can't really
Part
speak
of
to
yes,
it, but
but
there
it's,
is, we have a new application for that area.
yeah.
And we've been working on that for a while where, it is a brownfield site and it's under contract to Clean Earth. And they're proposing a conceptually a small industrial park there. And, we're going through the process of trying to further analyze the environmental conditions and work toward development of the site. But there's, as Tim mentioned, I think there's a lot of site issues in terms of wetlands floodplain. They did get a wetlands permit for their, proposed concept. But there's other things, they need to extend utilities under the railroad tracks, et cetera. And these are some of, just to mention that in the 2013 plan and the previous plan, we've had these targeted economic development sites, which are the larger undeveloped commercial industrial areas. And this is one of those.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. Okay, and kind of closing things up on land use and land cover. So as I mentioned earlier, land use is mapped a little differently. It's parcel based. So whatever the primary use is on that property, the whole property gets mapped as that use. Whereas land cover is a little more sensitive to each area of how the property is used. So when we take a look at land use through the town, what you could see is very clearly those dark green areas are open space, and many of those are forested areas, and those kind of jump right out. But balancing that out are the lower density single family, lower and moderate density single family, and those are the peach and the brown colors there, and the industrial land in the town, which is the large gray areas, particularly between in that along Route 9 and where it intersects the railroad tracks. So your most intense development is really concentrated along in the north part of town, along 372, along 9, and to a lesser extent along the Berlin Turnpike. And what I'll do is I'll take you on a very quick tour of the town. And it's always challenging to take lifelong or in some cases lifelong residents on a tour of their community and then try to show them something they don't already know. But I'll take you on a quick tour in a moment anyway. Getting into the numbers on land use, and so here we're measuring land use a little different from land cover. What you can see is 30% of the town is 30% of the town's parcels are covered by public parks and open space, or 30% of the parcel area is public parks and open space. And the next most common land use is low density residential, and that's that yellow bar at almost 22%, followed by moderate density residential at 14% and industrial at about 9.5%. And all the rest of the uses are a very small percentage of your land use and fairly evenly distributed across the different types of uses. Okay. So agriculture, what does it look like in Berlin? And I have an image, an aerial image here for each one of these specific land uses, just so that we're all on the same page when we're talking about land use as to what it looks like. And this is an example of what appears to be still a working farm in Berlin. I'm not quite sure what they're growing there, but the examples of work, as we talked about earlier, the examples we have of working farms are shrinking in town. Community commercial, this is an example of what that looks like. There are a few different areas that are categorized as community commercial, but you can see it's a smaller scale commercial development. Much of it, some of it's older in nature. It's been around for a while and concentrated on some of your more local roadways or off of Route 9 or 15 in this case. I think this might be 372 here. General business, you have general business areas strongly associated with the Berlin Turnpike, as can be seen in this example, and those business types vary quite a bit. In this particular case, see some recreation areas, golf cart and mini golf or go-kart, and mini golf, and some auto oriented type businesses, some light industrial. Low density residential is, it consumes a lot of land area in the town, and this is it's a perfect example of what we're talking about. We're talking about development that's kind of eating into the fringes of your forest areas, moving out onto former farm fields. And that's where a lot of the lower density single family residential development has occurred. And moderate density. So here we're talking about, half acres, smaller, quarter to half acres, somewhere in that area, of which you have a lot of examples of that through the town, a lot of neighborhoods. And then higher density, which is interestingly, it's some of your older development is higher density, particularly close to Kensington Center, where you have 2 and 3 family in some apartment buildings that are, close to 100 years old. And in some of your newer development with townhouses that are built at a relatively high density. So you have both examples in town. Village residential, this is much of that older high density is actually classified as village residential. And most of that's really strongly associated with Kensington Center. Mixed commercial and residential as well. And here we're up once again in near the train station area, and where we have that village residential bumping up against your local commercial. And also examples of mixed commercial and higher density residential, which are some of your more recent examples of development. This is along the southern part of the Berlin Turnpike with some high density residential on the left there, and existing commercial and kind of commercial, almost light industrial development adjoining it. And then as we looked at in the land use maps, land cover maps, the town has a fairly substantial industrial tax base and industrial properties associated with that. And this is an example of a fairly large industrial area in town. These areas will continue to be opportunities as industry changes, as businesses come out of business, go into business, go out of business, and that they will remain in flux with these uses changing, and they will always be opportunity sites for the town. Office and planned business, the Eversource campus is an example of that land use, and there are a few other examples in town of pretty high density office development. And also town facilities, in this case, the high school town facilities cover a decent amount of acreage between the parks and school buildings and DPW yard. They represent a measurable share of the town's land use. And parks and open space as well. Fairly sizable part of the town is obviously covered by parks and open space, and much of that land is on the western and southern sides of the town. In addition to parks and open space, you have private recreation, and an example of that would be this horse farm in town. I think you have more than one horse farm in town, and a few other types of uses that fall under private recreation as well. And regional commercial, this is actually a fairly small group of properties that are classified as this. You could probably lump this right in with general commercial. It really doesn't look all that much different, other than the fact that most of these properties are located in proximity of the Route 9 and Turnpike interchange. And retail shopping as well in the same area. And I've been around long enough to remember when there was a movie theater across the street from the movie theater. Can anyone else substantiate that memory of mine? Near Ocean State Job Lot, there was a movie theater over there.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I didn't imagine it. I saw a League of Their Own there, I think.
That hole there.
Matinee. Okay, all right. And then I, of course, remember when the other movie theater was built because I saw Goodfellas there. So this area is obviously an area that it probably is going to be deserving of some attention in the POCD, because the fate of movie theaters after this past year and a half is fairly uncertain, and this is a sizable property. And the shopping center across the street is certainly not at its highest and best use. It's an underutilized property as well. So that it would be probably worth a discussion about areas like this. What if anything, should the POCD do to recommend a future use or reuse of property such as this? All right, so that was a tour of your town. Now, our last bit of real technical work here is to talk about your zoning. And of course, zoning is what guides land use. And it's a very important part of our work here in the POCD is to make land use recommendations that will guide the zoning, and even in some cases to make specific recommendations as to amendments that you think are needed to the zoning to support your land use vision for the community. What we see is that the zoning is fairly commensurate with the land use that's in town right now, where with most of your commercial zoning along the state highways, and the industrial zoning pretty much where your existing industrial areas are, and that's that brown color. The commercial zoned areas are the red colors. And with your single family zoning being the yellow colors, covering really most of the town. I've got some numbers we can get into here in a minute. The green areas are the light lime green areas are mountain reserve areas. So those are areas that are zoned really to help protect that land. So what can be built there is very, very limited. And then there are a number of overlay districts, and we're not going to get into all the details of that tonight. But your zoning's really important when we have discussions about what you'd like to see for future land use, or maybe what you would like to protect, because this is really what gives the town the authority and gives you as a commission the authority to guide growth and protect land. And so we definitely want to make sure that the zoning is doing what it needs to be doing, and it's supporting your vision of the community. And so that we're going to come back to the issue of zoning again and again as we talk about how Berlin should grow and what should be preserved moving forward. All right, any questions on zoning? I did want to ask you, I've got the question written right there, but you know, do you have any sense as to whether or not the zoning should change in any meaningful way, whether it be areas being redistricted or allowed uses being changed in areas? You know, industrial zone areas, should they be expanded? Do you have any thoughts along those lines?
I have a thing about open space. I know town owns a lot of open space or the land trust or whatever, but over the years with the open space development that we had and pieces of land being donated to the town or the town trust, most of it's been along water courses or streams or whatever. And the plan of that was a big greenway from one side of town to the other side of town, basically. And I would like to see what potential we made already there. And, you know, people would think about walking trails and stuff, you know, is the old, basically abandoned railroad spur going to Britain. Is that a space for walking trails or whatever? Is it possible to get that, you know, like a Farmington, walking trails and stuff? That future thinking, but it's
yeah.
Your industrial area up there top of the screen, the other side of the Group 9, most of that's not buildable. Or landfill from the Matapasset River district, landfill by Manafort Dome, landfill by the city of New Britain,
Right.
non-taxable property. So all that up there is, a lot of it's taken already, taken or not usable. So do we have enough commercial land to get that tax-based stuff a little bit? You know? That's my question. Questions that have been posed to me over the years. But the greenways are.
The question I have is, what's the fine line between industrial and commercial, or manufacturing, should I say? Is it allowed? Because to me, industrial, I mean, it's heavy machinery and stuff, and we were all love to have it. That's not very realistic. But then you have the industrial zone, which might be more in, I mean, the manufacturing zone, which might be more of a reality. And so I'm just wondering, you know, maybe it's not a question of the industrial zone being maintained or expanded, but maybe it's a question of the industrial zone allowing for manufacturing use. I mean, I don't know. I don't have my regulation here, so I can't confirm that perhaps that already exists.
I believe your industrial zoning does allow for manufacturing. You know, that's generally what industrial zoning is intended to accommodate. Well, it's a wide range of fairly heavy uses, including manufacturing and you know, construction yards and shipping and warehousing, those sorts of uses.
And the last two plans, there were limited rezoning recommended of commercial or industrial areas to of residential areas to commercial or industrial, but it was very limited. And so it was kind of at the margins, particularly, you know, say near Northeast Utilities was one area. We made some changes on both plans, but, you know, again, taking a look in this plan at whether there's any other areas you want to consider. I think they'll probably be pretty limited, but also, just we've noted, I'm sure the commission is aware that over the course of the last 10 years, you've been approached by my colleague, Mr. Edge, many times, but we've been expanding kind of definitions of allowable uses in the commercial industrial zones to kind of adapt to the changing business climate. So that's another area to be looking at, in the process.
Thank you.
Okay. So as I mentioned, this is a conversation we'll keep coming back to, is because this is a very, very important function of the POCD is making recommendations specific to land use and zoning. So we'll be coming back to the subject of zoning throughout this process. All right. And when we take a look at the distribution of those areas, once again, what you see is really most of the town is zone residential, which lines up as you would expect with the actual land use. Industrial zones cover about 14% of the town, which is the actual land use for industrial areas, about 11%. So it's fairly well lined up. It does suggest that there are some areas that are zone industrial that aren't currently used for industrial use, and it may be because they're not developable areas. But your commercial zones are a fairly small share of the town. It's only 5% of the town's geography is covered by a commercial zoning district. All right. Okay. I do want to talk about TOD zoning because this is probably where a good part of the zoning work has been done in the town over the past decade or so, particularly since the Hartford Line station was planned, initially discussed and planned, and now obviously in service. The Village District Overlay Zone is really intended to be a TOD, a transit-oriented development zone that supports a mixture of uses and moderate to higher density residential as well. So I wonder if I know there's been a little bit of development activity in this area with some either approved or proposed projects. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about this. You could tell me if you feel that the zoning, the Village Overlay District Zone, has been effective in supporting the type of development you would like to see near the station, or if it needs to change in any way to better support your vision for this area.
There's a general frustration in the time that it's taking for us to accomplish the downtown village design.
Okay.
In general. And it's just limited by the ownership of properties already, and maybe a hesitance to make more drastic change.
But you don't feel that it's not that the zoning is overly restrictive or anything, and that's it's holding up projects. It's just that it's the property ownership and the developers at work that are moving things along slowly. Is that the real constraint?
I think so.
Yeah.
The town might have had the ability to be more aggressive by claiming eminent domain in certain areas, which is not something that any one of us really likes the idea of.
Right.
But we keep talking about this downtown village that just seems to never actually happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, these projects are frustratingly slow. Ken and I have worked on a number of TOD projects, and they take many years to take shape.
And my hope is that, if it does get feet off the ground, that it will spur other businesses to, and other property owners to look at what they have and what the possibilities of their properties has now become. And they'll take advantage of that and help move it in the right direction. But I think for us, it's sort of like, we see it coming together. It is quite slow, painfully slow. And it's almost as if I'm hoping that the downward turn in the economy does not really squash it. But those are things we can't control.
Right.
So I'm going to stick by, if we build it, they will come.
Okay. So what I'd like all of you to think about over the next several months would be, is there anything the town could do with respect to its zoning regulations that would further incentivize development in this area?
I think the town itself should be more active in the development of that area. You have one good sized development going in, taking its time, but the other side of the Farmington Avenue, which is the same colors. There's potential there because some of those buildings are either vacant or going down. And that's where we want to improve our town center.
Right.
So, maybe the town should look into acquiring some of those buildings, opening up that potential for the downtown being developed. You got one developer, it's going to be more development, festers more development. And if the town took a initiative to be proactive to develop that land, I think it can, they did. One piece that was really dead, I call it Marcy. The next to the rail track. Now Newport bought it, okay, and bringing it up a little bit. The firehouse property, there's 8 acres, 7.5 acres there. Matson Road, all those down the line there, is great potential both sides of the Farmington Avenue to develop. And we always looked at improving Farmington Avenue, and development there means putting those wires underground and everything else, and making that development that you want. So how do you motivate the town to get off the river?
Just takes money.
It just takes money, right?
It takes money,
Yeah.
because even if we were going to do something simply by taking all the electrical power lines and putting them underground, that project I think Berlin could have done years ago for maybe like $1.5 million, but now I think it's closer to 7 or 8 to take on that project. Now, a homeowner or property owner on Farmington Avenue is not going to do it. So it almost becomes a burden of the town to say, if you want to spruce up this road and you want to get it better looking and be more attractive, we're going to have to look at that as an investment. But I'm not sure that the town is ready to take on that project. I'm not sure that the taxpayers would say, oh yeah, sure, pick up my taxes. I just don't know.
Yep. Okay.
That'd be better than
Visual.
facade.
Yeah.
The
it's got-
facade improvement, they took the money and not do.
Well, the facade improvement, I mean, the people who are eligible for that and have been approved to utilize it, have been utilizing it, and the properties are looking better. I don't have a problem with that, but I just wish there was some way that we could get the funding or whatever to make that commitment and just say, this is what we're gonna do, and then plant trees and a nice like green path or whatever, and put some flowers or bushes in or whatever, and just turn the place more into a visual pleasantry.
Is
And
it
that's
federal monies, state monies?
It's state
whatever,
money,
you know,
well, we're not gonna go there,
You know.
state money equals my money, so.
Same.
Any tax money
Money's gonna be
is
money.
my money, I don't know, that's the way I feel.
Well,
But
I-
I'm not sure
Right.
how we're gonna tackle that project, but go ahead, sorry.
Okay, well, I expect that we're going to get a chance to revisit this conversation when we talk about economic development at a later meeting. And you know, this is a very obvious area that could and should be a focus of economic development for the town.
Just to point out that in terms of zoning, you know, the commission increased the density in the core area 1 and also expanded the core area 1 to account, and that was part of the stimulus that brought about the Newport project. So a question to the, you know, in this process would be, do you want to further expand the core area 1? For example, across the street, as Tim's talking about that area. So that'd be something to think about.
All right, thank you.
There's a potential thing, you know, for the town.
Okay.
thank you.
All right, well, let's keep going. So as I mentioned, that concludes the land use and zoning part of the work. We are at the same time moving things along with respect to community outreach. And a very big part of that effort will be the online survey. Maureen sent a draft of the survey to all of you. It is just in draft form, so you are the only other folks that have seen it. We are not going to go live with this until we're all agreed that we're asking the right kinds of questions. Ken and I have a lot of experience developing these surveys, so we put together what we think is a very good start. But you know your community a lot better than we do, so we're very receptive to any input that you might have on the survey. I wonder if anyone had a chance to take a look at the PDF of the survey that Maureen had sent out.
Yes, we did. At least I did. I don't want to speak for everybody. You guys.
There's a printed out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yay.
Yeah, we did. We did look at it.
printed out.
I wonder if you have any first impressions or that you'd like to talk about, anything that you feel like we're missing or off the mark on.
Well, I was a little taken back by the first question itself, which is, do you live in Berlin, work in Berlin, own a business, travel through, visit Berlin, none of the above? And I kept thinking to myself, well, okay, I can understand you want to know, do you live in Berlin? And maybe do you own a business in Berlin? But traveling through Berlin, visiting Berlin, I really don't care. I'm sorry, I don't care what these people have to say. I wanted more focus to people who actually are here paying taxes and
Right.
are part of this community. I mean, but that was just me just looking at the survey. I just thought to myself, traveling through Berlin regularly, I'm not sure. But I guess, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a fair question. We changed that. We very often ask a question like that, and we tailor it to the project and the community. We generally like to have these surveys be very welcoming of stakeholders, regardless of their relationship with the community. Obviously, if you're a resident, that factors in very heavily, which is one of the reasons we want to know who you are and what your relationship to the community is, so that we can filter our results and really take the residents we heard from. We could really prioritize what we're hearing from them. That being said, if you feel like we shouldn't even be opening up to people who maybe are just traveling through Berlin, don't have a more substantial relationship with the community, then we just get rid of that question. Usually we don't hear from people unless they're really invested in some way. is what it comes down to.
Exactly. I mean, I would, yeah, I could almost say live, maybe work and or own a property. I would say those three would be your choice because, you know, sometimes if you get you throw too wide of a net, you could get these people who say, oh, let's take this survey, and they could really botch you up by just like screwing with your questions, you know?
Right.
And they could skew it one way or another. So I think we want to see, you know, we want to get people who are invested in our town and care about the town. I don't know, that was
Well,
just,
with
that
that,
was
with
one
that
thing.
said, I can remember bringing potential business people through town when I was in real estate. You know, they were Avon, Simsbury type people, bringing them into center, I think this years ago, when the sidewalks just went in, the street trees started going in and stuff like that on Farmington Avenue. But was not impressed with Farmington Avenue at all in order to bring in business, retail, or anything else because of what it looks like. And had a lot of different opinions for that and suggestions and ideas. So I think, you know, if you go invite outside sources, maybe this business community or something that, you know, people want the West Harbor Center, they want that, you know, this kind of stuff. But, you know, are we going to ever go get that? Probably not. But you know, but it's just so what does people want? And the business people are really the brains that's going to bring it.
Well, yeah,
to
but
you,
that would
you
be
know?
covered with owning a business or commercial property in town. So even though they're not living in Berlin, they might be living
Well,
somewhere
they own,
else.
then they own it, but what if
But-
business people don't own stuff?
Yeah, but
That's
maybe
my-
they live in town.
They could just check the box, none of the above.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
leave travel through Berlin regularly and visit Berlin regularly out of the survey, but leave the none of the above box.
I was just
Yeah.
surprised
Well, how-
about the comments coming out like
How's
that.
how's the survey going to be distributed? You know, has that been discussed at all?
Yeah, we're going to distribute it as widely as possible, and that starts with posting a link on the town's website, sending it out via any email listservs that the town has, sending out a press release so we get local press coverage, posting links to it on local Facebook pages, printing out a flyer, posting a flyer at town hall, at the library, trying to work with the school district to distribute it through the school district to the extent that we can. So it's a kind of a full court press on that.
So maybe one option around that, instead of saying you travel through or visit often, you know, maybe you keep the first three that, you know, that were listed, but maybe you categorize it a little bit differently as, you know, do you plan on, or, you know, are you considering opening a business or, you know, doing something like that? And maybe those can be parsed out a little bit differently. You know, you can pull those out and aggregate those scores differently from those who actually are already here or, you know, kind of have skin in the game in town already. Because I think, you know, any changes you make, whether it's planning and zoning or changing anything, is going to affect those people who are currently here and potentially who moved here because, you know, it's a farming town, or, you know, I bought this house because I have all this open space back here, or, you know, this is supposed to be farmland and now they're going to change it, you know, and I think those voices carry a little bit more weight. And that's just my thought.
Yeah, I agree with Sandy. I mean, is there a way to aggregate it in the sense that when someone selects, I live in Berlin, you will be able to separate everyone from.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, you know, then
very much so.
Yeah, so I don't think then that having outsiders, you know, give their input is going to skew the survey at all. If we know what their input is and where it is coming from, And there's probably some useful input from outsiders at times, and we can see it. Maybe we get a good idea, and we say, oh, that's pretty interesting. We have that idea, whatever, but we'll know that that information is coming from people outside of town. This is inside.
Right, you can compare it.
Identifiable.
Very-
I know you're going to emails and stuff like that, and probably the websites, town websites and stuff like that. But it is impossible to do the citizen, I mean, put a flyer in the Citizen or something like that. That's a lot less expense thing than trying to mail everyone.
No, I don't think they're gonna do it. They're gonna
No,
have.
right.
Oh,
Yeah, we can't do direct mail, but
No, don't do direct mail, and I went to the Citizen,
Not
because a
direct
lot of
mail.
people just go from the big box to the trash. Yeah, so, or to the wood pile. So,
Goes every
yeah,
house.
that's just like
Goes
that
every house.
online.
And we'll be able to assess incrementally, like
Yeah.
in a week, how are we getting the results? We do some initial looking at it, say, boy, we're getting a lot of good results, or we're not. Maybe we need to revisit how we're advertising it, or even looking at some of the results from the questions and say, maybe we're missing a segment. So we will look at it and assess, like, right, the first week and say, okay, are we doing it right? Is it generally going in the right direction?
I like to get the.
Is it gonna be,
In town, that's pretty good.
and I don't know the right way to word it, but is it gonna be identifiable where, say, one person who, really wants to get something changed because they want something in, can't go in and take the survey 5 or 6 times? You know what I mean? You really
Yeah.
only
There-
really want them to take it once.
We,
Yeah.
what we do with that is we don't limit that because especially if someone's in a library and we do it, sometimes the libraries will put QR code, and so it does trace the IP address, which is sort of the behind the scenes with the computers, but we don't limit it to one IP address. So in those public, if you have a public computer here, more people can take it. But we do kind of look and are able to see, is there 15 people with the same IP address all giving the exact same answer? You can kind of flag it. We actually, very rarely do we see that loading of just like a national election, but very rarely do we see that, everyone
If
always.
someone really wanted to get something done for all this time, they could look at it and say, okay, here's my chance. Look, there's
Yeah.
20 of us. Let's go in there 50
Yeah.
times. And we did-
Yeah, we'll be able to see like from the IP address, if it's all
why I
the
said
same
it's
exact
like-
answer, then we're like, that's a flag. But if it's a
Okay.
different, it's the same IP address, like a public computer, but you can see there's different answers, then we're just assuming it's like a
Okay.
library. So,
I mean, I know nothing's foolproof, but,
Yeah.
at least if those checks are there.
We have small handouts or business cards or something, with like the link and QR code on it, so if you're engaging with a member of the community, you scan them and have them scan it on the phone.
we'll have,
We talked about a QR code, didn't we?
yeah, we
Chris, oh, was that
typically,
you I had that conversation with?
yeah, we typically generate one for each of the surveys. So just to make it as easy as possible for people to access the survey, take it on their phone if they want to, or on a tablet or their laptop. Yep.
the QR code is, since COVID has gotten to a whole new like revival.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable how much we did for a while, no one's using it. Everyone wants QR codes.
I did have one comment on that first section of asking about whether you live or work or whatever, kind of on the same page as Peter, but wonder if we should have a question of whether, and it goes back to the aging community that we talked about last time, that do they have family in Berlin or are looking, because you're going to miss those people who maybe went away to college and settled someplace else for a short period of time, but they're looking to move back, but what is keeping them from doing so? And, those people
Okay.
that, I don't know if there's
Yeah,
a way to
yeah.
look at that or, but then how does the committee feel about it? I'm staff, I don't really. It's not my skin.
I think it should be specific, senior center or whatever, have access to it or flyers there they can fill out. If they have their meetings and stuff,
And we could definitely have question, there may be ways of putting that to frame, right, do you know
Frame.
people that are interested in?
Yeah,
Just to get a-
not you're not driving through,
Right,
but
yeah.
you regularly
Moving here to
visit
live versus moving
because.
here to open,
Right.
moving here to live versus, opening a business account.
Mhm.
Could be totally separate, but I think those are better questions to ask, like you were saying, versus driving through town or just visiting. You know, I think if we could get more specific, that would be better.
And you'll be able to see if it skews something.
Right.
Okay, so we're not gonna have time tonight to go through this whole survey, but I do want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to review it, and please do any ideas that you have or comments or requests for changes to the survey. Please send those on to Maureen and she'll get those to us. And you know, before we go live with anything, we'll share a revised or finalized survey with you to have one last look at it so that we're all on board. What we'll do to make it even maybe a little easier for you is we'll share with you the actual link so that you can kind of like take it as a test, and just to see how it flows for you as well in the actual online format. So let's agree to do that. If you could, let's say by the end of next week, if you could get back to us with you know, your ideas or comments in the survey, would be very much appreciated. That way we can get this buttoned up and figure out when would be the best time to release it to the public.
Okay, great. That sounds very doable.
Okay.
All right, and so I think like, what's it, the 4th or 5th? Is it the 4th or
Friday's the 5th.
5th? Okay, so it'd be due by the 5th. 5th of November?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that would be great.
Oh, she's Mark.
I got one.
And we'll send out the online link tomorrow.
Okay, great, thank you. Is that it for the night?
Okay, we have
Almost.
one more item to wrap up, and this you did most of the work at the last meeting. We did the real work, and so what we did from our visioning exercise last month was we tried to package all that together into a working vision statement, and I'll get to that in a moment. So summing up what we talked about last month, you know, we asked you about you know, what you value most about the town, and you told us about its location and the small town feel and all these other attributes. What you would like to see more of, and so we have a pretty big list from that. What concerns you have for the town's future, and you know, we heard about water resources and tax base and the character of town and the ability to continue to maintain emergency services and other services. And from all that discussion, all those ideas, we put that together into this draft working statement. So I'll rather than read it at you, I'll give you each a minute here to read it, and then perhaps we spend a couple of minutes talking about whether or not we're close or off the mark. I'm going to make one change as we go along here, because we're missing a very important word here. There we go. Okay, sorry about that.
He added
Two.
2. That was all.
You
2
forgot a
grubs.
linking word.
Yeah, sorry. All right, and once you're done consuming that, tell us what you think.
Just generally speaking, I do like it. I think I would like to have in that vision statement something regarding the farmlands. In other words, you, toward the end, you say Berlin will balance growth against preservation of its historic landscape and village centers. Somewhere can we say historic landscapes, farmlands and village centers. I would
Sure.
like to see farmlands brought into the picture.
Okay,
And historic landscape, I don't know if we want to say historic landscape or actual buildings.
History, preservation of the local history.
Of the local history, you'd rather have local history instead of historic landscape? Or,
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure what historic landscape means.
What about historic agrarian landscapes?
Oh. Whoa.
You get that, Francis? You get that, Francis?
yeah, I did agrarian, historic agrarian landscape, yep.
He's into this agrarian thing. He's used it twice already.
I'm gonna pull a little edit when you, strong connections to the region and within town are high valued. So highly valued or of high value.
Okay,
But you
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I probably highly, but
Where are you? Oh, I got, what?
Highly valued.
Within town are highly valued by the community.
oh yeah, that should be a highlight, yep, sorry. Yep,
channeling Fran in my office. She's our editor,
Yeah.
my editor.
Good.
She corrects me.
Anything else Ruth, that you see? I know the hour is late.
No, but I do
We need
agree
her.
with that, the farming. I think it's a big part of what Berlin started as. and I think
Yeah,
it's
and I
very
think it's a
important
big
to,
part.
I think it draws people
Preservation
to
is-
town.
Yeah.
Preservation of
Yeah.
the farm.
They just like the open, some people come into this town and say, oh my God, I can't believe all the land you have. It's beautiful. I want to live there. Well,
That's what
we're
happened.
gonna buy a house. It's all we built. We're not building. Just kidding.
This is why it's a farming town. Great, we're in.
Yeah, I know.
Same here.
All right, I think you got as much as we can out of this bulletin.
okay. So once again, like the survey, this is something you can mull over a little bit. And if you have any thoughts about, adding a sentence, rewording it, feel free to send it over to Maureen and we'll kind of keep a running list and we'll come back to this. Maybe not at every meeting, but periodically we'll come back to this so that by the time we get to the end, we've got something that really hits the mark.
Excellent. I thank you. I don't know, anyone else? Or do you have anything else for us? I'm sorry.
No, that's it. Just wrapping up with next steps and that's it.
Maureen's got her hand up. Watch out. This could be trouble.
Next meeting,
Next
we
meeting.
have,
Next meeting.
we have
Yeah.
to firm up the dates for the next meetings. If Francisco doesn't mind me forging
Yeah,
ahead
I've got a slide for that next, Maureen. So,
I saw it.
and, yeah, and keeping with the theme of tonight, which is that you guys are 1 or 2 slides ahead of me the whole night.
I just know I have to,
Yeah.
hold up on the adjournment of a meeting until I get my
Yeah.
last word.
They're not sliding.
So just to let you know that what we're working on is our next steps are really try to get the community engagement off the ground. So finalizing the survey and launching that, it would be a very important part of that. And along with that launch will be really kind of the big public launch of this process. So there'll be a press release and we'll do that social media work and try to distribute the information about the survey to as many people as we can. Along those lines, we're beginning to put together a list of key stakeholders and thinking about interviews and focus group meetings that we will conduct as part of this process. We're coordinating the mapping with New England Geo and we'll be beginning to collect data in support of the affordable housing plan, which that process will get started in a month or 2. And then our next meeting, we'll cover the topic of conservation, open space and recreation. along with natural resources. So we're working towards that, and we'll talk about that at our meeting next month. And as a reminder, our topics over the next few months, as we have it sketched out, and depending where we're at in the process, we might slide things around to better accommodate our schedule. But we'll be going topic by topic over the next several meetings. And so to get to Maureen's point about pinning down the next meeting, Maureen and I had discussed Monday, November 22nd. And because the Thursday of that week is Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So we're hopeful that that works for all of you.
The regular meetings are what,
The 4th Thursday, oh, the regular meetings, yes. The Planning and Zoning Commission meets on the 4th and the 18th.
Now, is that gonna be too close to Thanksgiving with the 22nd? As opposed to 29th?
I'm not,
Anyone traveling?
I'm not.
All right,
I like it.
so 22nd's okay, Sandy, good,
Yeah.
Peter, everybody, okay. So we'll call it for the 22nd. What time do you want to start though? Still 7, because the town hall's up closing at 4:30.
Right, that's up to the commission,
You guys want to start
committee rather.
earlier?
It's the commission.
You want to do like at 6?
That's hard for some of you. I know, I recall that early, it's hard for some people.
6:30.
Well, we'll try 6. Yeah.
You want to try 6?
Yeah, we'll try 6.
You want, okay, if that's what we're gonna aim for, I'll change that right now.
Yeah, I think we'll try for the 6. This way, if Maureen's here, she doesn't have to
Just
sit by
wait,
herself, you know, at the town hall all closed off.
Plenty to do.
But I know, but if we can get in at 6, we
You
can
don't
maybe
have
get out at
overtime
just an
payment.
hour, people at the
Comp
town
time.
holidays. Yeah, do we want to talk about the Christmas one?
I think it would be really good if we could get that.
Yeah, we
on
haven't
the
figured that out
calendar,
yet.
if at all possible.
Yeah, let's, okay, so.
Do you have a
Look at
November,
that.
One
December
slide
to
ahead of
show?
You don't have a slide.
Yeah, I don't have a slide for that. Sorry. But let's talk about it.
How many meetings of planning and zoning? We only have 1 meeting in December.
Yeah.
No, you have 2.
We have 2 now?
You do have 2 scheduled
Oh, I
because we
like
only
that.
have 1 in January. Because the first meeting in January is like right after the new year. We only have the
No, we're
1
so
in
close.
January.
We really have 2 in December. Normally, we only go down to 2 in December.
So December
Only
1,
one.
2nd, and the 16th?
The December meetings are December 2nd and December 16th. It was that change from the 1st and 3rd, from the 2nd and 4th
Then the
Thursdays to the 1st
The
and 3rd.
Monday
they put
again
it
is
up.
the 20th,
Well, good.
and
Well,
Christmas isn't until
Right.
Saturday, so.
Yeah, so the 20th, how does the 20th look for folks?
Can you bring up your Google Calendar maybe, Francesco? Or no, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can.
Just to show them a calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. I can open up a calendar here.
In that you're sharing your screen, I think it's just easier. I can take it back if I need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let me pull up the December calendar and I will share that screen with you.
we'll do that again at 6 p.m. because it gets dark out at 4:30. December 20th, 6 p.m. Make it earlier. Everyone cool with that? Critters are in. Put me in. Or 3:30.
Okay,
Quick, we're
Oh,
gonna
no,
finish
they're
the
out
side.
in the dark.
all right. Let me just switch screens here so we can,
No, he just had it on.
He just put his picture up there.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. He did his screen share.
okay.
I'm gonna quiz him on this.
How's that? Can you see the December calendar?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is displaying.
So,
Thank you.
Monday, the 20th, I guess. 6 o'clock.
It works for me.
Okay, well, let's do it then. You want to do it at 5?
Oh, so you may be out there.
Bye, Francisco.
Yeah, I have, I have a
We're going back and forth.
I'm a fly.
5:30?
Um,
I think 5:30.
Well,
Okay.
it's not like early.
You
know what?
Winter, so it's all good.
Retire in the
What?
winter.
Retire in the winter.
All right, so
Still haven't got my
5:30.
price on my tree.
let's, yeah, let's tentatively hold that. I need to confirm. I might have a conflict. I'm gonna have to check on that, but I don't want to keep it from us from holding that date. So let's hold that for now, and I'll circle back if that ends up being a conflict for me.
I was gonna say, Francesco, you and I also discussed possibly the week before, I think, because you did comment to me that you might have a conflict on that date. Do you want to
Right.
see how the week before goes, or would you rather, or do you want to check your conflict first?
Yeah, I need to check first because
Okay.
the holiday schedule, it's all a little wonky, and I've got 2 other regular Monday meetings, and I'm not sure how they're going to play out because of the holidays. So let's hold the 20th for now, and if it's an issue, we'll work to identify another date.
5:30, 6.
5:30?
So 5:30 tentatively. that day.
At 5:30. Okay.
In case there's a snowstorm.
Can we Zoom? 19.
Yeah, Zoom.
Make Maureen come on.
One more
on the
canceled
day.
show, one more canceled meetings. Right?
That's it. No more canceled
All right, so
meetings.
that concludes our presentation, and not sure, Maureen's, Jim, is there anything else you'd like to take care of before we adjourn?
Anything else, Maureen?
I don't think so. I was just looking at my notes and no, I don't think so.
I'm good.
Yay.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to
Make a
adjourn.
motion?
Somebody make motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 9:05.
Okay.
Can I do that? Okay. Mr. Sigmund has a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And did Andrew actually vote?
You gonna keep the meeting open for him?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Night.